Hi, it's Mai here, and this is my TBR for the Classic SFF Readathon, which is a readathon that I'm hosting from April 1st to April 12th. I will leave the announcement video in the corner, but it's all about reading science fiction and fantasy books published before the year 2000 that were written by women. The main challenge for this round is Through the Ages, which is to read a book from 3 consecutive decades, and the book that I'm going to start with is from the 80s, and it's a book that I've been meaning to read for the longest amount of time, and that is Dragonsbane by Barbara Hambly, and this is the first book in the Winterlands series. And I've been wanting to read this ever since 2017 Worldcon, when Robin Hobb and Scott Lynch praised this author, and I thought a lot of her books sounded interesting. I think I own like 3 of her ebooks, and I haven't read any of them yet, but this is the one that I want to start with, and this is basically the reason why I decided to host this readathon now, because I really want to get to this. So this is a fantasy series, and this book has a very basic sounding fantasy premise, which is about a group of people who are tasked to go and kill a dragon, but the main characters aren't people that you usually see in the forefront of fantasy novel. I think the main characters are a middle-aged couple. There's Jenny, who is a sorceress, and John, who is called John the Dragon Slayer, but he's more of a scholar. I'm very interested in that premise and this author, so I think this book is the one that I'm gonna start the readathon with. I own the ebook on my Kindle. Dragonsbane is 352 pages. I tried to pick books that were a bit shorter, so that I could read 3 during the 1.5 weeks. So from the 80s, we're moving to the 70s, and this is a familiar author to me. I've read her books before, and that is The Forgotten Beasts of Eld by Patricia A. McKillip. This is her World Fantasy Award-winning novel. The main character is a wizard called Sibel, who lives by herself, but with all these magical creatures with her, and I think something happens to disrupt her life. I love Patricia A. McKillip's writing style, so I'm really looking forward to this one, especially since it's like one of her most known, most talked about works. And this one is 240 pages, so I think I'll read this in about 3 days. So those were the 2 books that I am the most interested in, and now we have the 80s and the 70s, so I should either pick a book from the 90s, like I was planning, or from the 60s to get the 3 consecutive decades. The problem with my 90s books is that they are all very long, the books that I own. The book that I was thinking about reading from the 90s is Black Sun Rising by C.S. Friedman, but this one is 595 pages, so I'm not quite sure that I could do that. This one is like a horror science fiction fantasy mix where people live on this planet that has an element that feeds on their fears and manifests creatures, like horror creatures, like I think vampires and things like that. So it's sort of this gothic science fiction world. So that sounds very interesting to me. I have read the sample chapter of this from the Kindle, but I never continued once I bought it. This one might be too long for me to pick, so I have 2 shorter books as possible books from the 60s. The ebook that I actually own from the 60s is Witch World by Andre Norton, but I don't know if I'm on the mood for this, but it is only 224 pages. This one has a character, a man from our world, who in some way travels to this world where there are witches, and that's all I know about it. But like I said, I don't know if I'm in the mood for that. As you can see, this guy, he has a gun. I'm all for the witches, but I'm not sure about that aspect of it. And the second possibility that I have from the 60s I don't actually own, which sort of defeats the purpose of hosting this readathon, because I wanted to get to the classic SFF ebooks that I actually own, because I have accumulated so many of them. But I am so interested in Tash and the Chesters by Ellen Kind Mackenzie, which is also from the 60s. And this book came to my attention when Ellen Kushner was talking about it on Twitter. And I think it's a kids or middle grade book. And it's about an orphan who is raised by court jesters. And I love jesters, so this is like calling my name, and it's quite cheap as an ebook. And it's only 333 pages. It's a bit longer than Witch World, but I could still do it. But that would mean that I had to buy it. So my definite TBR for the classic SFF readathon is Dragonsbane by Barbara Hambly and The Forgotten Beasts of Eld by Patricia A. McKillip, and then something from the 60s. I don't think that I can get to the longer books from the 90s, so it will be either of the ones that I showed you from the 60s. Definitely let me know if you're participating and tell me about your TBR or your TBR videos. And you can use the hashtag ClassicSFFRat on Twitter so that I can see when you tweet about this readathon. I hope you will join me, and that's all from me for now, and I'll see you in my next video.